The restaurant was glowing with gold light for my parents' 45th anniversary when I sat beside Leo, watching him bounce with excitement for his meal. Then the server arrived, placing dishes around the table, everywhere except in front of my son. Brianna slid a bread basket toward him and said, "Cold as glass, we didn't order for your son." Laughter followed. Even from my father. Leo's face flushed, eyes dropping. I whispered one quiet word to myself. People at that restaurant saw just one ugly moment, my sister pushing a bread basket toward my son and announcing that no one had ordered food for him. But that scene was just the tip of a very old iceberg. It took 10 years to get there. After my divorce, I did what a lot of single moms do. I went back home for a little while. I had a full-time job as a project manager, a small emergency fund, and a 9-year-old boy who depended on me for everything. The plan was simple: stay with my parents for a few months, catch my breath, and then move out again. It didn't go that way. From the moment I came back, my parents slipped into a familiar role, not as emotional support, but as people who viewed me as the strong one, the one who could handle anything, absorb anything, pay for anything. My father, Dennis, liked to say, "You always land on your feet, Mara. You're tough." It sounded like a compliment. It wasn't. It was permission, for them to lean and for me to carry. My sister, Brianna, had always been the golden child. Growing up, every dollar, every compliment, every opportunity seemed to naturally drift in her direction. She got dance classes, art programs, exchange trips, rent paid, cars replaced. I got reminders that I needed to learn responsibility and stand on my own 2 feet. Adulthood didn't change that. If anything, it made it worse. By the time I returned home with Leo, Brianna had spent 4 years between jobs, drifting from one vague dream to another. Yet my parents still called her devoted and fragile, insisting that she just needed a little more time to find herself. In the meantime, someone had to keep everything running. Over the next 11 months, I paid Brianna's rent because she was between creative seasons. When her utilities were shut off, I paid those too, 8 times, because my mother said Brianna was too embarrassed to call the company. At Christmas, when Brianna showed up empty-handed again, I bought presents from her so she wouldn't feel ashamed. My parents gushed about how thoughtful she was. No one ever asked why my name was on every receipt. My mother, Valerie, had a favorite line whenever I hesitated. "You're stronger, Mara. You can handle more." Brianna is sensitive. Strong. Capable. Tough. Those words didn't feel like praise, they felt like excuses to never prioritize my needs. And then there was Leo. My son didn't ask to be born into a family with a hierarchy. He just wanted grandparents and an aunt who loved him. Instead, he got sighs and sharp looks. "Your son is too loud. Your son can't sit still. Your son is going to end up like his father if you're not careful." They said it like a joke. It didn't sound like one. I watched my parents light up talking about hypothetical future grandchildren Brianna might have one day, while treating the grandson standing in front of them like an inconvenience. When Leo excitedly tried to show Brianna his drawings, she brushed him off with, "I'm busy," even when she was just scrolling on her phone. When he asked her to help with a school art project, she actually said, "I don't babysit other people's kids." Other people's kids. My son. Her nephew. There were so many little moments I tried to swallow. The way my father snapped at Leo for spilling a drink, but shrugged when Brianna scratched their car. The way my mother compared Leo's grades to some imaginary version of Brianna at that age, even though Brianna never brought home report cards like his. The way they treated Leo like a guest, but Brianna as royalty. I kept telling myself to let it go. To be understanding. To be the bigger person. To be strong, the way everyone said I was. I hoped, stupidly, that all the money I poured into keeping the peace, all the times I bit my tongue, would eventually turn into appreciation. Or at least respect. Instead, it turned into entitlement. By the time we walked into that anniversary dinner, a script had already been written about who mattered and who didn't. So when Brianna pushed that bread basket toward my child and said, "We didn't order for your son," what she really meant was, "He doesn't count. You don't count. You're here, but you're not really part of us." When the laughter followed, it wasn't just cruel, it was honest. It showed me exactly where we stood. Driving home that night, Leo sleeping in the back seat, the word noted echoed in my mind like a sharp little bell. They had drawn their line in public, with my son as collateral. And for the first time in 10 years, I stopped trying to step over it. They drew the line tonight, I told myself quietly. Now I'll draw mine. I didn't say anything else at the restaurant. I didn't yell. I didn't demand explanations. I didn't even look at Brianna. I just placed my hand on Leo's shoulder, steadied him, and called the server over. "Can you cancel every dish that hasn't been started yet?" I asked calmly. The whole table froze. "And please charge everything already prepared to the main tab under Dennis Ellison. It's his anniversary dinner, after all." The server blinked, glanced at my father, then back at me. "Of course, ma'am." "And for your son?" "Bring him a ribeye steak," I said, my voice steady. "Medium. And quickly." The server nodded and hurried off. The entire table stared at me like I had overturned the tablecloth. Valerie hissed, "What are you doing?" I turned to her. "I'm paying for my son. You can pay for your celebration." The silence crackled like electricity. Brianna's jaw dropped. My father muttered something under his breath, but no one dared push further, not after the way they had humiliated Leo. When the server placed Leo's steak in front of him, he whispered, "Thank you, Mommy," in the smallest voice I'd ever heard. That alone made every second worth it. We ate in silence. There was no more laughter. No more toasts. No more fake family warmth. I walked out of that restaurant holding Leo's hand, my head high, the bill charged exactly where it belonged. But they weren't done. The next afternoon, right when Leo and I were getting ready for his soccer practice, there was loud, angry knocking at my door. The kind of knocking meant to intimidate. To unsettle. I opened it to find my parents and Brianna standing there like an angry committee. Valerie didn't waste a second. "You owe us $350, she snapped. "Half of the bill." I blinked. "Excuse me?" Dennis puffed up. "You embarrassed us last night. The least you can do is split the cost." Brianna crossed her arms. "You were being dramatic, Mara. That whole scene was unnecessary." "Over one plate of food." "One plate of food she refused to order for my son," I corrected. "Let's stay accurate." They rolled their eyes in sync, like I was the problem. "You overreacted," Brianna spat. "As usual." Something inside me snapped, not the way it snaps when you lose control. The opposite. It snapped into perfect clarity. I walked back into the house, grabbed a thick folder from my desk drawer, and returned to the doorway. I didn't say a word as I set it on the dining table. I opened it slowly, deliberately. Inside were 12 months of rent payments I had transferred to Brianna. 8 separate utility payments I'd made just to help out. Receipts for Christmas gifts I bought on Brianna's behalf. A screenshot of Brianna texting me. "Can you spot me $200 for a dress? I have to look good for the party." I slid each page across the table like cards in a game they didn't know how to play. Valerie's eyes darted over each page, her face draining. Dennis cleared his throat. You didn't have to do all that. I looked directly at him. I know. I shouldn't have. But I did. Right then, the front door opened. Aunt Marlene and Uncle David stepped in. They had been planning to visit anyway, but the situation unfolding in front of them shifted everything. What's going on here? Marlene asked. Valerie tried to speak, but Marlene raised a hand. No. We've seen enough through the years. And we saw what happened to Leo at dinner. Uncle David nodded. This favoritism has gone on too long. Brianna scoffed, You're taking her side? Marlene answered without hesitation. Yes. For the first time in my life, someone in my family chose me. I reached into my wallet and placed $350, 6 crisp bills, on the table. I'm giving you this, I said, not because I owe you. I'm giving it because I don't want you getting the full amount. Valerie gasped. Brianna's mouth hung open. Dennis looked like he'd swallowed glass. I stepped back toward the door. That's the last bill I ever pay for this family. No one spoke. The air in that room felt brittle, like glass cracking under pressure. For the first time, they weren't yelling. They weren't demanding. They weren't even defending themselves. They were stunned. And I realized something beautiful. For once, I hadn't responded with emotion. I responded with facts. With boundaries. With truth. And truth, spoken calmly, is louder than any scream. They left without saying goodbye. But for the first time, I didn't feel abandoned. I felt free. A few hours after the confrontation at my house, I finally got Leo settled with homework and sat down with a cup of coffee. My hands were still buzzing from the adrenaline when my phone rang. The number was blocked. I answered, and froze. Hello, this is Child Protective Services. We received an anonymous report about potential neglect of a minor in your home. We need to conduct an immediate wellness check. My stomach dropped. There was only one person cruel and petty enough to do this. Brianna. I swallowed hard. Of course. Come by now. We're home. When I hung up, my hands were shaking, not out of fear for Leo, but out of fury that someone would weaponize my child to hurt me. The CPS worker arrived within the hour. A calm woman named Stephanie stepped inside and asked to see Leo. He was building a Lego spaceship on the living room rug, humming to himself. He looked up and asked, Mom, who's that? This lady just wants to say hi, sweetheart. Stephanie knelt beside him. She asked gentle questions, what he liked to eat, what his day looked like, whether he felt safe at home. Leo talked about soccer practice, the science project he was excited about, and the cookies we baked the night before. She checked the kitchen, clean. His room, cozy, tidy, full of books. His backpack, homework neatly finished. Within 20 minutes, she closed her folder. Everything here is perfectly fine, she said. This report appears to be retaliatory. I'm marking it as unfounded. I exhaled shakily. Thank you. She gave me a sympathetic look. I'm sorry, Ms. Ellison. These kinds of calls often come from family disputes. But legally, you should protect yourself. This won't be the last time they try something. Those words hit me harder than I expected. After she left, I sat at the table staring at the wall. My own sister had tried to use the system against me. Not because I was a bad mother, but because she was losing control. I needed help. Real help. So I called the only lawyer I trusted, Carson Blake, an old colleague who now specialized in family and civil harassment cases. When I explained everything, the restaurant incident, the financial history, the screaming, the CPS call, he didn't interrupt. He listened the way people do when they're cataloging every detail. "Send me the documentation," he said. I emailed it all. Bank statements, rent transfers to Brianna, utility payments, Christmas receipts, screenshots of her asking for money for a dress, the restaurant bill dispute, and now the CPS visit. Within an hour, Carson called back. "Mara," he said, his voice steady, "this isn't family drama anymore. This is harassment. And it's legally actionable." I closed my eyes in relief. So what do I do? I'll prepare a cease and desist. It will legally prohibit them from contacting you for money, interfering with your parenting, or reporting you falsely again. If they violate it, we escalate. When he arrived with the documents, my hands trembled slightly as I signed, but my eyes didn't waver. For years, they had told me I was the problem. Too emotional. Too dramatic. Too sensitive. But Carson looked at me and said something that pierced straight through the fog. "You've never been the weak one, Mara. You've been the backbone they drained." Something shifted inside me. For the first time, I realized I wasn't the one ruining the family. I was the one surviving it. And I was finally done being their target. I should have expected they wouldn't stop at humiliation or harassment. People like my family don't lose quietly. They escalate. They double down. And when they realized I wasn't going to crawl back, the next step was obvious. They filed a petition for grandparent visitation rights, claiming it was in Leo's best interest. When Carson read the paperwork, he exhaled sharply. They're not even hiding the manipulation anymore. Courtrooms have a particular kind of cold. It doesn't come from air conditioning, it comes from the weight of judgment, the echo of every lie spoken too confidently, the fear that truth won't be enough. We sat at our table, papers neatly stacked, evidence ready. Across from us sat my parents and Brianna, looking polished and fragile, as if they were the victims. Brianna's eyes were already glossy, prepared to cry on cue. Their attorney, a stiff man with a too-tight tie, nodded sympathetically at them. The hearing began. The opposing attorney stood. "Your Honor, we are here today because Ms. Ellison has unjustly and maliciously cut off contact between a child and his loving grandparents. She has denied them access, refused communication, and is actively harming the boy's emotional development by withholding family connection." I didn't move. Carson didn't blink. "She is overreactive," the attorney continued. "Impulsive. Quick to anger. Our clients are deeply concerned for the child." Concerned? These were the same people who refused to order him dinner. Carson leaned over and whispered, "Breathe. We're about to turn this around." Then he stood. "Your Honor, before I address anything my colleague said, I'd like to begin with an official report from Child Protective Services, the same agency contacted by the petitioners just days ago." The judge's eyebrows lifted. "Proceed." Carson handed over the folder. "This report states that the anonymous accusation of child neglect was investigated and deemed false, retaliatory, and baseless. The investigator concluded the child is healthy, safe, well cared for, and emotionally secure at home with his mother." The courtroom shifted. Even the opposing lawyer blinked. Carson continued, "Next, Your Honor, we have a series of text messages sent by the petitioners, specifically Brianna Ellison, calling the child a distraction, a spoiled brat, and in one message, an inconvenience I didn't sign up for." Gasps. Real ones. Brianna's hand flew to her mouth. "That's taken out of context." Carson ignored her. We also have multiple messages demanding money from Ms. Ellison, guilt-tripping her for not paying her sister's rent. He clicked a button, and the courtroom monitor lit up with screenshots, timestamped, uncropped, unmistakably Brianna. The judge stared at her. Ms. Ellison, did you write these? She stammered, I was stressed. Carson moved on. And now, Your Honor, the video. Dennis looked up sharply. What video? Carson pressed play. The restaurant came alive in the courtroom, the clinking glasses, the soft music, my parents' laughter. Leo sitting quietly. Then Brianna's voice, clear, cold, cutting. We didn't order for your son. The room froze. The camera caught Leo's face, his confusion, his embarrassment, the way he folded into himself. Then the laughter around the table. Dennis chuckling. Carson paused the video on the frame of Leo looking down at the breadbasket. Your Honor, he said softly, this is how they treat him in public. Imagine what happens when no one is watching. The judge turned to my father. Mr. Ellison, did you truly push a breadbasket toward a 9-year-old child while laughing at his reaction? My father lowered his head. The first honest gesture he'd made in years. Yes, Your Honor. The judge exhaled, exhausted. And you believe you deserve visitation rights? Silence from their side. Absolute silence. Carson delivered the final blow calmly. This is not about love. It is not about connection. It is about control, financial, emotional, and parental. Ms. Ellison has provided for this family for years and received nothing but contempt. The only person protecting Leo has been his mother. The judge nodded slowly, decisively. Petition denied. And let me be clear, if any further harassment, false reporting, or intimidation occurs, the court will issue a restraining order. My parents sagged. Brianna burst into tears, but this time no one moved to comfort her. I stood. I didn't look angry. I didn't look shaken. I looked finished. I won't let you hurt my son ever again, I said, voice steady. Not emotionally. Not legally. Not in my home. They stared at me, stunned, as if realizing too late that the person they'd underestimated had been the one holding all the power. For the first time in my life, they had to look directly at their own reflection. And they didn't like what they saw. After the hearing, everything unraveled for them faster than I expected, but exactly the way choices like theirs always do. Carson negotiated a settlement that required my parents to repay a portion of the money I had covered over the years, rent, utilities, repairs, even those Christmas gifts they pretended came from Brianna. It wasn't everything I'd spent, but it was enough to mark a boundary. Enough to make the truth official. They had taken advantage of me, and the law agreed. A week later, I received a text from an unfamiliar number. It was Brianna's husband, Matthew. He wrote, I'm sorry for everything. I didn't know how bad it was. I'm done with her lies. I'm paying back what she borrowed from you. He transferred the money that same afternoon. No drama. No excuses. Just closure from someone who finally saw what I'd been carrying alone. Meanwhile, my parents were too ashamed to show their faces around town. Their friends had seen the video, the courtroom clips, the reports. Their polished image had cracked, revealing everything underneath: favoritism, cruelty, manipulation. Their downfall wasn't my doing. It was the echo of their own choices catching up. As for Brianna, she went silent. I didn't miss her voice. Leo and I packed our things and moved into a small apartment on the edge of a quiet neighborhood, sunlight across the floor in the mornings, a tiny balcony with 2 chairs, and enough peace to breathe for the first time in years. In that space, we started building what family was supposed to feel like. Friends who checked in on us. Neighbors who learned Leo's name. People who didn't take advantage of kindness, but returned it freely. I opened a new journal, blank, clean, uncomplicated. On the first page, I wrote, "The peace I needed was never in that house. I had to build it myself." As I set the pen down, Leo ran from his room and wrapped his arms around my waist. "Mom," he said softly, "I like this home." I closed my eyes and breathed in the quiet. For the first time, the air around us felt light. I looked straight at you, the same way I looked at them the day everything finally broke. Love without respect isn't love. And a family without kindness isn't a family, it's a place where you slowly disappear. I take a breath, steady and sure. If you've ever had to protect your child from the very people who were supposed to protect you, you're not alone. There are more of us than you think. And there is nothing shameful about choosing peace over loyalty to pain. I let that sit for a moment. Tell me your story. Share what you survived, what you reclaimed, what you walked away from. Your voice might be the one someone else needs to hear today. A small smile. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of quiet revenge, emotional truth, and the strength it takes to finally break the cycle.